On the
and
previous
you're coming at it
episode,
from a scientific perspective, and you were coming at it from the perspective of keeping people safe in a lot of ways, making sure there weren't pesticides, making sure there weren't microbial agents in the products. So that's what really spoke to me back then. You're now 15 years in to SC Labs, but especially at the beginning, did you feel challenges and feel underestimated being in the industry, etc.? Discussion in your search for a partner, for a finance partner, and in the discussions with them, first off, you guys were very clear about what you wanted out of a deal, and
Right.
there are some things to negotiate, and there are some things that are non-negotiable, and you were very clear about what those things were, which is hyper important. And then secondly, what are you really thinking about once that deal closes? How do you react professionally? How do you react personally? What was going on with you? Well, and talk about that a bit. I mean, definitely the fortunes of the industry just could change on a dime. The regulatory environment changed on a dime. You expect a particular set of rules to come out, and something kind of different comes out. Those sorts of things, which just make it incredibly difficult. It'd be like a general contractor having to meet a new building code every 8 months or something. You could do it, people would do it, but it'd be much tougher. And to your point, even getting normal banking, let alone financing from people, was just not doable for a long time. So you were kind of stuck cobbling a lot of capital together by yourself until you had the finance partner. So one thing you mentioned is kind of stepping back and stepping back in. I mean, what was that process like for you and for the business? How long was it?
So I think I when the deal closed in February of 2022, it was about 2 years until actually we showed him that. It was May of 2023 where I ended up taking back over. And in that time, we had three CEOs. So I think at the time, I had a conversation at one point about possibly coming back, and I was asked, and I said, made a commitment to my family. I had a vision of what I wanted post transaction. That wasn't really a part of it. Um, the private equity firm recruited and got a CEO who was real. I mean, he was really talented. He had a great background. He really understood business. But I think the challenge was he didn't understand this particular business.
Mm,
And that was right. It's such a nuanced space. This is lab testing, but this is more the
right.
cannabis industry. And the cannabis element of lab testing here dictates all, right? So in places where there's no one, we're heavily subject to, like you said, the regulatory requirements and regulatory enforcement. Now think about that same dynamic you just said. The rules change in the contractor every 8 months. But imagine if in certain places, nobody ever enforces those regulations on the other contractors. You, as a contractor, have to decide whether you're going to follow the rules or you're not, because everybody else is blowing through projects because they don't meet spec and it doesn't matter. And you decide that you're going to take the route of every project that you make is going to be of quality. It's all going to meet. It's all going to meet spec. It's all going to meet every regulatory standard. That's what we had decided. That was a harder road. It was the right one. There wasn't another way for us, but that was the right one. And so, right. I mean, that's a tremendous challenge, and you have to be able to, for somebody who's um, you have to be able to charge a premium in a space where nobody has any money, and everybody, and a lot of times they don't understand the value of, like, look, I just need this. I just need I just need to pass. I just need you to
I
finish.
need a check
Right?
mark. Let's go. Yeah.
I need a check mark. So, it's a hard place to run a business and to come in and run a business and not really understand that dynamic, right? And so, that didn't work very well. I think what happened is sometimes in small businesses, if there's an aggressive growth plan, there's you know, uh, there's a decision made to hire people who come from those larger industries. And I'm sure in certain instances that might work. But I think that the challenge as an entrepreneur, one of your greatest strengths is the fact that you're flexible, you can wear any hat, you can step in any room. When stuff changes, boom, you don't push back against it, you roll with it. If you can roll with it faster than other people, you have an advantage. And that really isn't, if you're coming from a $4 billion company, that isn't your background. Or you have a team that you can hand that off to. There's no team. You do that, right? Come up with the idea, execute on it, and then move on. I think that was what was challenging, right? And so that
Well,
it
and
just
you
didn't
and you
work. It
built your
wasn't a
team.
great fit.
I mean,
And I
and
built
Jeff,
my
and
team. Yeah. Yeah.
to your point, you have to build the team when you're going from really, really small to less small to a moderately sized business. It's part of that, and staffing is always going to be a big consideration in how you manage your team, find the team, and keep the team. That's a huge part of leadership, generally speaking. But to your point, it looks a little different when you're coming from the Jeff show to a bigger business.
It does. It does. And like you said, you have to understand you have to understand your team. You built your team around people with specific proficiencies. If you then ask them to do something else, you have to understand whether or not they really have that skill set. You have to make a commitment that if they don't, you're going to build it. Or if that isn't going to be your commitment, you're going to find somebody who can either take a leadership position in that space and create that or fill that gap or something. Like in some way, you
Mhm.
can't just hope for it to be different and have a strategy where the pieces don't fit together, right? Like to,
Right.
to, to your point. And I think that was a lot of what we saw. So there's a disconnect. And then, small businesses sometimes push back against what they feel is a corporate environment.
By
It's
nature.
very different when the owner walks the floor and engages and knows everybody by name, sits down and eats lunch with everybody. We're going out for a beer afterwards, or whatever it is. Like that's a different dynamic than you know a 65,000 person company leading a group that large. You have to treat it differently, and so when by the time I came back, I think there was we had put ourselves in a position of being greatly overextended, right? Really spending in a way that didn't suit a small company. We were just on a trajectory that didn't, and we were losing market share and
Mm,
revenue.
mhm.
And so I think, not only were we spending all that money, but we're actually getting a lower return, and a business performing more poorly than I had before. And so I think, my coming back in, I think the thing is we had lost sight of, well, why are you here? What are you doing? What is your vision for what you're doing? Why would somebody be more invested than their paycheck in putting their energy into the business? How do I get a sense of ownership among local leadership, among the managers and directors, not just C-suite above, to
Mhm.
progress the business? They have to believe in that vision. They have to believe in your mission. They have to be attached to the business, the outcome of what they're doing. I think we got pretty far away from that. And I think when given the opportunity, when I came back, it was twofold. One was I understood it in the way that I understood it, which was, the business exists to accomplish its mission, right? There's a financial set of requirements that we have in there, and we have to adhere to those. And a lot of those require greater cost controls and greater sacrifice in certain areas, and definitely a smaller bureaucracy atop it, right? It just can't afford it, right? So that
Right.
was that was that was part of it. And then the other part of it was I also understood that there was a certain amount of, I had built my people, I had invested in them, they had invested in me. There was a level of trust, and I knew that after watching X amount of CEOs go by, are you really going to buy into the next one? Do you know what I
Yep.
mean? Like you have to have something that brings you back, that recenters you. When you feel like in any way, shape, or form, whether it's your meditation or whatever it is, when you feel flustered, when you feel disorganized, and you feel that you have to bring it back to center. And I felt like maybe I could fulfill that role by giving somebody, by putting leadership in front of people that they understood, that felt like, okay, this is more akin to why we were here in the first place. That took some time, right? And
Mhm.
but over the, since that time, I think just financial discipline, looking at those spaces, focusing on the spaces of the business where we felt there was real opportunity, being very critical about that, having a strategy that was again more specific to, more aligned with our mission than just the financials, right? I think that put us back in a place where we're turning the business around. We've gone from losing an incredible sum of money every month, to being profitable. And that felt, it's incredible. We've had great years in the past. That felt like such a win because I wasn't sure that we were going to come back. That was the other part that was a little daunting about taking that position. I just wasn't, I wasn't sure, given the situation we're in, that we were going to make it back.
That's a weird that's a weird position. I mean, kind of being in a turnaround in kind of your own company. Uh, so obviously you kind of got things back in a certain sense back to basics, back to what the company had been. But what are some of the things that you did differently when you had a a second shot at it? I mean, clearly the other CEOs had they wanted it and they had the ability to do it, but they didn't have the get it portion of that. They didn't quite have that grasp of it, whereas you did. And other than trying to make it back to SC Labs 1.0, how what did you do differently as Jeff Gray CEO 2.0?
I think it gave me the opportunity. So what I did is, it gave me one, the stepping back and sort of watching other leadership and other leadership styles. Um, I actually thought some of it was really smart. I thought some of it was very
Right.
strategic. These were people who had come from very sophisticated backgrounds, very knowledgeable, very smart. I'm not actually looking at the. I think there's a right CEO for the right size and time in the company's life, and I think that was probably the biggest issue at the time, right? And so,
Mhm.
I actually learned a tremendous amount. Like I said, I wasn't just um, it wasn't just a soundbite for the for the podcast saying, like, we were able to make good decisions because of the advisors that we had around us over time. We had learned a tremendous amount. What we did with those advisors, we filled gaps that we knew. Oh, I don't have a skill set. Let me bring that in. Because if I don't bring that in, we're the business environment is going to be missing something. They weren't always advisors, just to me either. I had sales leadership that I knew that I didn't have a pedigree in that sales space, and I didn't have a really organized sales method and set of sales methodologies. So I brought people in who did, and we both
Right.
learned and both grew as a result of that. And so seeing these leadership styles and seeing what worked and what didn't, I think I was a significantly better version of myself than I was when I stepped away. Um, I think, I think the thing that I had to be different was, it was a different animal. Cannabis has
Right.
evolved over time. Hemp has evolved over time. Those markets have evolved. The regulatory environments have evolved, and we as a company were different. It wasn't just the team I put together at SE Labs. It was the aggregated team over the larger business. And I was able to pull in, I'd taken the time to get to know people, understand what their skill sets were and were not, and was able to kind of pull that together. Um, I think I had done that better. I think I had a better understanding of how to interact with a more sophisticated board. It's not what we did previously.
Right.
Previously, the founders were the board members, and we had one of the investors on as the board member. But there were five of us, and they were one of them, and there were four of us, and it was going to go like we said, right?
Right.
And we knew each other. We were family. We had grown together over that time, and so that whole dynamic of the interaction between the board and management was very different, right? And is very different. And I think it's a strong one. I think it's a better. I think we're a better, stronger organization for it. So, and sure, what I do, I evolved, right? I mean, I took the time that I was not in the position to learn more about how there are other ways to approach this, and took the learnings of the greater business environment, a larger, more sophisticated business environment, try to incorporate that both in the interaction with board and deal team and private equity firm, but also with my own directors and own leadership team and the business itself. So,
And definitely one of the things I really respect the most about you is both your combination of confidence as at the same time being humble and being in a learning mode all the time. And I think that's just really, really cool about you as a person. And it's definitely come out as you as the leader, because of course the leader can't do everything and doesn't do everything themselves and doesn't know everything. But your ability to, or your really your willingness, that's what it comes down to, right? Your willingness to take whatever's going on and create lessons for yourself out of them. It's that's awesome. I've always loved that about you. Um,
thank you.
you touched
Appreciate
on, oh yeah, of course. Um, you touched on something. In fact, let's just do a couple of really quick questions right here at the end, or getting towards the end here.
it. Yeah.
And just get out a couple of things. I mean, you touched on something. The founders were family, and a found family, and they, the leadership and control, and it was all of the things, including the composition of the board. I mean, but were all four of you always aligned?
Um, no, absolutely not. But so yeah, before and after the deal, absolutely not. So I think we're a strong company because we weren't aligned. Like, we would,
Fair.
maybe it could have happened under sort of a more organized dynamic, but we would be screaming at each other, having these discussions about what we do. I will say this: all four of us were aligned in that we were invested. All four of us were aligned in that we had a vision for the company. That vision is what drove us, and that we were willing to sacrifice. We didn't take pay. We didn't take paychecks for 3 years, and we started this and all of, lived off credit cards and did the thing. So we're all willing to commit, and we all had a very good idea about the priorities, right, for the business. The integrity of our science, the integrity of our name, right? Authentically being part of the cannabis industry where so much exploitation is happening, doing those things, making real partnerships with different sectors of the community. That was all very meaningful for us, and I think it's around those things that we can always coalesce and always come back together. So whether we argue on a particular strategy or not, or a particular hire or something like that, we could see through that. We could get beyond that because we knew, right, the more meaningful stuff that binded us together and kept the company going.
Well, that goes back to rewind 15 years ago, and you're all sitting around for beers. I mean, would knowing what you know now, I mean, would you have done this? Would you have embarked on the same adventure?
Interesting. Yes, right. Yes, I think it's hard though. You can't ever go back 15 years and not make different decisions. I want to say
No
it in a
time
way that
machine.
it was still a good decision, but like, no, it wouldn't have turned out like this. We would have done things very differently because we would have known a lot better. We would have had the maturity and the experience and all that good stuff. But yeah, I mean, the best. one of the best decisions I made in terms of something to commit my time and energy to, and people to commit my time and energy
Right. Well, and one thing you've told me in the past is that hindsight is undefeated, so you don't you can't second guess yourself about what seemed like a good decision at the time and turned out to be a pretty
to.
good decision too. So in this adventure, what were what was a particularly high point and a particularly low point?
Um, Particularly high point, the moments within the adventure itself that aren't necessarily that are like these meaningful experiences we had in making this happen. Winning our first big deal. You know what I
Mm,
mean? We had a concept that didn't necessarily resonate with people, right? There's a transactional cannabis business, and people, you will come to me and I will give you cannabis and you will give me money and a transaction is had, and that makes sense. But that's not what I'm selling. What I'm selling is no, no, no. You give me cannabis and you also give me money. Both come this way, and I'm going to give you data. What do I do with this? Well, you can inform your clients or hone your craft or right, but now you're empowered with the information that can give you stronger decision making capabilities and blah blah blah. All pass. There was a lot of that, and what we did initially is we there was this company called Weed Maps, who was this online cannabis could not be advertised on the internet. So you can't go on Google Maps and find dispensaries. Weed Maps is displaying all the dispensaries and 95% market share. They're showing dispensary menus. This is what you can buy. And all it showed was a funny name like Super Bubblicious OG and a price.
mhm.
And so most people, right, and a location, that's where you can go get it. So most people, what information do you really have to go make a decision whether to go to one store or another, whether they get one product or another? And so we, we pitch to them marrying test results. We pick up samples, we put test results on the menu as well. Now people can actually have a little sense of what it is that they're buying. I mean, that was an amazing idea to us at the time, and really what we spent all of our money, we raised a tiny bit of money, $80,000. That's it. Like if you brought me $80,000 and want to start a lab here, you just have no business starting a lab, right? And so a lab right now costs you $1 million at least, right? Finance some of it, whatever, but still. So we bought all of our stuff at auction, and we spent all of our money on the lab because we had to. Well, now how are you going to sell and market something that's brand new to people? And so Weed Maps was our leverage. And so to us, it was the perfect culmination. That doesn't happen. This doesn't happen. So when I think back about some like really high point, like and it was an adventure going down there. We a friend of mine's little brother was a pilot. Well, I didn't understand. He's like 17 years old. He's flying us in this tiny airplane. We're all packed into it down it. Like it's this awesome adventure about the stuff that you do when you're trying to spin up business. And yeah, man, it was an amazing time. And there's so many of those moments. Those are my high moments about this business. Funny enough, it's not a check, it's not an amount, it's not whatever. It's those experiences. And then,
Sure.
you know, uh, low points. I mean, we've the swing, the pendulum in cannabis is significant, and with every um, almost with every new uh, president or AG sitting in whether it's California or the federal government or what have you has this different perspective on cannabis and what that's supposed to mean and how that's supposed to go. And there have been times where like I remember after Obama left office, or when Obama first took office, sorry, the sitting, um, heads at the DOJ actually put out these letters all around California to the landlord saying, shut down the cannabis businesses here or we'll confiscate your property. They didn't do anything.
Mhm.
They didn't take any action after that, but they did send out these letters. I mean, for 2, 3 months, nothing, right? Like no business at all. It's hard to run when no client, every client of yours shuts down, right?
Right.
So, I mean, there are these devastating moments that scared us that we almost lost the business. And I think that's where you're like, it's not necessarily that where our profitability is going down. I mean, we're almost losing the business. 5 years in, we put all our time and all our energy. We finally started getting a paycheck. I'm making this amazing $30,000 a year to, to run this business, and
Don't
so
calculate the per hour on that. It doesn't feel good.
so yeah. I mean, those were stressful times, man. I remember really stressing, like, okay, it's payroll. Where do I go get money? That kind of
Hmm.
thinking. Yeah,
Yeah, you go get it because you don't have it, and it's not even
you
in
don't
the
have it.
safe in dollar bills.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
The so you you weathered those storms, which truly are worse, I'll say, than most. I mean, it's an uphill battle because you basically did have to create your own market to sell into because there wasn't a regulatory environment back then. And then you have to, go through all the just sometimes whimsical changes in the regulatory environment. But once you got there, and you had the big wins too, once you got there, got through the deal with private equity, did you get yourself did you reward yourself in some way?
I did. Um, we bought a house that was, uh, let's just say, on par with the size of our family. Everybody's got their own bedroom now. I mean, I'm not talking luxury. I don't think that's how you define luxury, but we did that. And in California, in Santa Cruz, that's not cheap. So, yeah, and yeah, honestly, what I did do is that I gave myself time. During that transition period when I was no longer working as CEO. I mean, I'm not doing 7 days a week, 10-hour days. I'm actually saying no, taking a weekend, taking time off. I've never taken like vacations and took some vacations, took some right. I think, and that was probably the most meaningful thing. I got to do take some amazing trips with my family and take some time. And what's good about that is I've stayed with that, I've stuck with that. You know what I mean? Like we take
Mhm.
vacations each year, right? I mean, we're not jet set around the world, but we're spending time with each other. And that's something I probably should have done a long time ago, right? I mean, keep that balance, but it is what it is, and that's the trade off.
Well, speaking of, I mean, I'll get into now a couple of just getting to know you questions for everyone. And some of these answers I actually don't know, um, but we're all constantly learning, right? That's part of the process that you're explaining now. Hey, you're a better dad than ever. You're a better CEO than ever. You're a better partner than ever, etc. And I mean, hopefully that continues until we all kick off. But one of the ways that I really try to learn and improve myself is through reading. And are you reading something now, or learning something, or in a class or anything like that to improve you?
Yeah. So, um, I think there was a time when I was spending a lot of time reading business books, and I honestly think that what I had done is I had spent so much of my time during the day focused on my business itself, learning about just it felt narrow to me, right? And so what I needed to do is I need to exercise the other muscles and the other facets of my personality that made sense. And so, just beginning to read books that have absolutely nothing to do with business, but really to do with the world around me and what I'm seeing and maybe how I could have better conversations with my kids, right? And so, the current book I'm reading is this book of 100 Years War, right? And it's
Oh,
about
cool.
this conflict, right? The conflict in right, if you want to characterize it as that in Palestine and in Israel, and right? It's something that, when my kids are getting to an age, they're asking me questions. And the truth is, I have these beliefs that I'm not really sure I can, right? And so I'm just spending as much time reading and trying to, trying to get as rich an understanding of the world around me as I can, because I'm having to answer more questions to young people who they're really looking for answers. They're really trying to understand it, and I'm challenging my own understanding of things. And so that's what I'm spending a lot of my that's what I'm spending a lot of the time on. A lot of my
That's
reading.
awesome. That's awesome. And I think it's really interesting in that the there's even a tie back to what you're doing, because there's always a degree or two only of separation between any topic, it seems like, because Israel is a mecca for cannabis research. And so there's Israel's going to come up, in conversation, even in your business, let alone with your family as well. So that's really interesting. Uh, Almost done here. What is something that is not on your LinkedIn profile or on your about page or whatever? Something that, something I don't know.
Um, you got me racking my brain trying to think of what you know and what you don't.
Well,
Um,
don't worry about that.
um, I think one of the perspectives I have is that I think a lot of times you're understanding your life through the lens of the few things that you really understand well. And if you have mastery of something, maybe that gives you greater insight because you're looking at things more dynamically. The principles behind something, that maybe some greater truths. Like, I spent, you know, time I was 4 till I was in my 30s. I practiced martial arts with my father, who was my teacher, and my father's teacher is a legend in Japan. Was president of the All Japan Karate Federation, right? And so when I was young, I would train before school. I'm talking about in grade school. From the time I was 4, I would train in the mornings when I woke up for an hour. I would train at my dad's school for 2, 3 hours a night. I would train on the weekends, 7 days a week. I would train from 4 until I was 30 something. I mean, I invested so much time, energy, and emotion into that it defined a lot of how I understand the world, right? And um, yeah, I mean, I don't practice anymore, but to this day, I think it's how, again, like it's my native language, if you will. I don't know if that makes sense, but
Sure.
yeah, and that's something I don't think I share often, or many people know
What, that you can kick their butts? Yeah.
about.
Just kidding.
It's a way to frame it, but yeah, just the martial experience and
You
that.
should start every negotiation like that, right? I mean, I studied martial arts for 25 years. Let's negotiate.
Break the table in half, and then yeah, yeah, exactly.
There we go. Well, all right, Jeff. I'll finally let you off the hook. I think this is probably the longest and awesomest recording that we've done so far. But last thing, where can people find you if you do actually want to be found?
Yeah, I mean, LinkedIn, email, just Jeff at SE Labs, right? I mean, uh, right. I mean, I'm still open, and we're still small, and I'm still learning, and I'm still engaged with as many people as possible, just to kind of expand my learnings and my professional network. So, you know,
Awesome. Well, Jeff, this was really incredible, and I really, really appreciate you doing this. Obviously, everybody should feel just the authenticity and passion that I know is there. Uh, and yeah, I mean, hopefully everybody got something out of this. Like and subscribe. Thank you.
thanks for having me, Ben. That was fun.
Listeners, thank you for tuning in. This has been an episode of Max Value. Find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and other streaming services. Please like, subscribe, and follow, and we'll see you for the next show.